Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalam ala Sayyidina wa Habibina wa Azimina Rasulillah. All right, so we said we're going to review this chapter of Sujudu Sahwi. So I'm just going to read through it slowly, inshallah. Went through it swiftly last time. The author says, digression, prostration of forgetfulness. Why is it digression? Let's see the contents really quick here. So we're under this chapter, prayer integrals, including serenity, and its forms and components, all of those under one chapter. So it's mostly about the integrals of the prayer. And under the integrals, there are forms and components, which both of those are sunnah. Integrals are obligatory. Form means hay'ah, and component is ba'd. The hay'ah and the ba'd, both of those are sunnah, not obligatory. So all of those are compacted under one chapter here. Prayer integrals, including serenity, and its forms and components, those two things that are sunnah. Okay, so then here are all the integrals here you see. First, second, third, fourth, fifth, seventh, ninth, 11th, 13th. What happened there? First, second, third, fourth, fifth. Okay. Where's sixth and eighth and 10th and 12th? How are those skipping like that? Because those are the integral of serenity. So that integral, which is counted 4 times in 4 different spots, was just put in one spot and explained. Actually, before talking about the first integral, here in this book, the integral of serenity was explained before explaining the first integral, which is the intention. So then it's not repeated here. So then that's why it goes like that. First, second, third, fourth, fifth, seventh, ninth, 11th, 13th. Because that's the count of the integrals. According to saying that there's 17 integrals. And under integrals, you can see we have forms. Form 1, Form 2, Form 3, Form 4. Under the takbir, so many things there. Understanding, there's a form there. Under the Fatiha, there's a form there. And another one, and another one. And like that, there's 15 hay'at mentioned by Abu Shuja. Because this book is synopsis of explanations of Abu Shuja. So there's only 15 forms mentioned here because following Abu Shuja. And you see how these forms are interjected between the integrals because of the form of the prayer, the format of the prayer, and the sequence of the moves of the prayer. So since prostration of forgetfulness comes before the salam, the digression was added there. We have the 15th integral, and after that, there comes one of the ba'ds, the 15th integral, the prayer for the Prophet. Then you're going to say prayer for the Prophet's family. So that's not obligatory. Prayer for the Prophet is obligatory. Prayer for the Prophet's family is not obligatory. And if something warranted sujudu sahu, then before you would make a salam, which is the 16th integral, you would prostrate for forgetfulness. So it's called a digression here. In the text of Abu Shuja, it's just its own chapter. So that chapter was squeezed in right here. So the sujud of sahu, forgetfulness, is sanctioned. It's mashru' for patching deficiency in the prayer. That's clear. Patching means fixing, rectifying, or making up for. Is there a broad rule? There's a broad rule. Broad rule is that it is for committing something prohibited in prayer or for abandoning something commanded to be done. That's the broad rule. What's bold here? Committing something prohibited in prayer or abandoning something commanded to be done. That's what warrants sujudu sahwi. Committing something prohibited in prayer, like an extra standing or bowing or prostrating. So that means stood for 5th rak'at, bowed twice in 1 rak'at, prostrated thrice in 1 rak'at, for example. Or sitting out of place forgetfully. And here, forgetfully is a condition. Committing something, that means adding. Committing here means adding. So adding something prohibited in the prayer, yani adding something to the prayer, committing something prohibited in the prayer, which is adding something. The only way your prayer is going to stay valid is if you did that forgetfully, not on purpose. So if you stood for 5th rak'at on purpose, or bowed twice in 1 rak'at, etc., that means you invalidated your prayer. Or for abandoning something commanded to be done, like leaving out bowing, standing, prostrating, or an obligatory sitting, or an obligatory recitation, and then moving beyond its spot. Now, these examples here also would have had to been abandoned forgetfully, these cases. But for this part of the rule, it is possible to abandon something that was commanded to be done deliberately if it's not obligatory. So some of the non-obligatory parts of the prayer were commanded to be done. In fact, it's valid to say all the sunnah things, or the sunnah in general, the broad meaning of sunnah is something commanded to be done. The voluntary recommended good deeds, they are commanded to be done, but in a way that you're allowed to not do it. The prayer has some things that are commanded to be done. If you left them out on purpose, your prayer is still valid. And it has things that are commanded to be done. If you left them out on purpose, your prayer will be invalidated. So if you left out the integral on purpose, your prayer will be invalidated. If you left out the sunnah on purpose, your prayer won't be invalidated. But don't forget, there's 2 kinds of sunnah for the prayer. There's the hay'ah form and the ba'd, the component. And in the rule of sujudu sahu, this second part here, it's the component that's included there, not the hay'ah. You don't make sujudu sahu for skipping a hay'ah in the prayer. Any question? There are 2 prostrations like those of the prayer. Yani, sujudu sahu that's the name of the type. And it actually is 2 prostrations. The sujud is just a single word. Usually, if you want to mention 2, you say sajdatan or sajdatain, 2 prostrations. It's valid to call these 2 prostrations sujudu sahu, the sujud of forgetfulness. It's 2 sujuds, like those of the prayer, yani like the integral sujuds. They resemble the integral sujuds. Even if multiple issues warrant their performance, when we say they resemble the integral sujuds, that means what? Yani that hints at what? That including its conditions and its sunnahs. What's the condition for the integral sujud? Then you need to do the sujud of sahu like that. What's sunnah to do in the integral sujud? The sunnah for you to do that in sujud of sahu too. 2 prostrations like those of the prayer, like the integral prostrations. Even if multiple issues warrant their performance, meaning you're just going to do 2, no matter how many things you do that would warrant sujudu sahu. Because it's possible to do more than one thing in one prayer that would warrant sujudu sahu, requiring an intention these 2 prostrations, unlike the prostration of recitation in the prayer. We don't need to talk about that now. Okay, they are voluntary, so not obligatory. 2 voluntary prostrations. He says, so isn't it recommended to not follow a person in prayer who you know who leaves out the sunnah in the prayer, for instance, the sitting up first tashahhud? I didn't hear that this is sunnah not to follow that one. I don't remember learning that. So they are voluntary, not obligatory. Unlike the rectifications of Hajj. So if you know about the chapter of Hajj, then this sentence easy for you. If you don't know about the chapter of Hajj, then this makes the whole sentence heavier for you. What's the rectifications of Hajj? Yani the dam in Hajj, which is when you leave out an obligation or do something prohibited in Hajj, there's rules. Some things you have to do because of leaving out an obligation or doing a prohibition in the Hajj or in the Nusuk, the Hajj or the Umrah. Sujudu Sahu, you are going to do it if you leave out something or if you do something you shouldn't do, but it's not obligatory. In the school of Ash-Shafi'i, they are before the salam, those 2 sujuds. Whether for something added or subtracted. Whether you added something or subtracted something, they are before the salam. Because that is the last of what was confirmed from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That is the last of what was confirmed from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That sentence has an implication. The implication is that something else was also confirmed. Confirmed is an important word here. This implies something else was also confirmed from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this is the last of what was confirmed. So it is deemed as abrogating what was before it. Doing it between the salams is abrogated. So for us to consider it abrogated means we are actually authenticating it. To deem it abrogated, we're actually authenticating it. The 2 sheikhs narrate that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam prayed dhuhr, stood after the first 2 rak'ats, and did not sit. So the people stood with him until he completed the prayer, and the people awaited his salam. He said a takbir while sitting, then prostrated twice before the salam. Then he said the salam. The 2 sheikhs, Al-Bukhari and Muslim, narrate that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam prayed dhuhr, 4 rakat prayer, stood after the first 2 rakats and did not sit, meaning he skipped the first tashahhud. That's a component, ba'd. So that in itself warrants sujudu sahu. So the people stood with him. There's fiqh in there. What do you do if the imam skips the tashahhud? You stand with him. Inshallah, we'll go back and review that too. Until he completed the prayer. Yani, they followed him in his prayer. And the people awaited his salam. So he's sitting. It didn't say the salam yet. He said a takbir while sitting. Allahu Akbar. So it's not usually what you're going to say right there. If you're not going to do sujood, you're going to be in your sitting position, reciting tashahhud, and saying the prayer for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And if you want to add the prayer for his family and the Abrahamic prayer and any dua that goes there, and then you say assalamu alaikum. So they were awaiting his salam. That's what you're waiting for in that position. And he said a takbir while sitting. Then he prostrated twice before the salam, alayhi salatu wassalam. Then he said the salam. If one says the salam deliberately while remembering the prostration, meaning you did something that warrants sujudu sahu. You didn't forget sujudu sahu, which is before the salam, and then deliberately you said the salam. So that means you skipped sujudu sahu. then you missed it. Now you can't go back to it. Or if he said the salam while forgetting, he forgot he wanted to do sujudu sahu. So he said the salam. But then a long time passed, a normally long time passed, and then he remembered. So he missed it. Can't go back to it. Or else, if it's not either of these two, he did not miss it. What's neither of these two? So one is, he said the salam deliberately, remembering the sujud, so not that. And he said the salam, forgetting the sujud, and then it was a long time, not that either. So what does it mean? Means he said the salam, forgetting the sujud, not deliberately, and it was not a long time. Then he did not miss it, and he may still perform it, as if he never said a salam. He just does two sujuds, and then he repeats his salam. Or, if he wants, he can leave it, since he said his salam. Any questions so far?
Right?
Yes.
Well, he remembers he didn't do sujood saw. In that case, he has less reward, right? He's not patched at the beginning why we are doing the sujood saw for patching, for amending. Correct? I mean, he has less reward.
I haven't heard about this case in particular, but as per the rule, that not doing what sunnah is less rewardable.
Okay, that's what I meant.
Yes.
The word. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. One would either leave out an integral, not on purpose, forgetfully only, or a component, forgetfully or on purpose, or a form, forgetfully or on purpose, because those are sunnah. You don't have to do them. Of an obligatory or a voluntary prayer. So even if it's a sunnah prayer, sujudu sahu still applies. And one would either doubt that he missed something or remember. One would either doubt that he missed something or he would remember that he missed it. And that would either be before the salam or afterwards. So that's three cases for you. First case, leaving out an integral, a component, or a form. Second case, doubting or remembering. Third case, before the salam or after. That's doubting or remembering. Before the salam or after. Okay. It is insufficient for replacing an integral. It is sujudu sahu. So I mentioned for you. Here in this chapter, sometimes we use singular pronoun for sujudu sahu. It's one sujud in name. Sujudu sahu. Sometimes we said they or them because it's two sujuds. So the pronoun alternates there. It is insufficient for replacing an integral unperformed deliberately. It is insufficient for replacing an integral unperformed deliberately because that means you invalidated the prayer because you're toying with the prayer. And it's insufficient for replacing an integral unperformed forgetfully. So the sentence is, it is insufficient for replacing an integral unperformed deliberately or forgetfully, and then something is interjected in between. Deliberately invalidates the prayer for toying with it, or forgetfully, which won't invalidate the prayer. So, mashallah, this way that is worded like this, you might find it, one might say, tricky or requires concentration. But it's close to how the scholars, it's close to what they do. So if you know what they are saying, you can follow it. It actually it's, it's intelligible, quite intelligible. But if you don't really know their style and what they're saying, you don't even understand what's going on there. When one remembers it before getting to the same integral, so that's why now, Yani, I'm reading this with you. Maybe some of you have a copy. Let's say you wanted to review with somebody. Yani, not a bad idea if you can. So you need to have, inshallah, If you can explain that, that's good for you. May Allah enable you. Ameen. Wait. So when one remembers it before getting to the same integral in the next rakat, he immediately returns to it. When one remembers it before getting to the same integral in the next rakat, he immediately returns to it. That's clear, right? You remembered that you missed something before you get to it in the next rakat. You missed ruku'. And while you were in sujood or sitting between sujood or standing for the Fatiha, you remembered that you didn't bow. So you remembered before you got to the same integral in the next rakat, which would be the next bow in this scenario. Then you immediately return to that. So if you were in sujood and you remembered, you're going to stand all the way up and then bend over for ruku'. Same thing, if you were in sitting and you remembered, you're going to stand all the way up immediately and then bend over for ruku'. Or if you were already standing reciting Al-Fatiha and then you remembered, you're going to cut that Fatiha and bend over for ruku'. When one remembers what he left out, the integral that he did not perform, before getting to the same integral in the next rakat, he immediately returns to it, does not delay. Because we said here, before getting to the same integral in the next rakat, why we said that? Because if he did get to the same integral in the next rakat, he would consider what he did in between as canceled. Before getting to the same integral in the next rakat, and therefore considering everything that he did in between the two as canceled, if he remembers before that, then he immediately returns to the position that he remembered that he missed it. And then he continues from there. I think that's clear, inshallah. And doubting is like remembering, important rule. Doubting is like remembering. Doubting if you performed an act is like remembering that you did not. So I could add more words there. But this is what the scholar said. Doubting is like remembering. So that sentence is a summary. The meaning of it is doubting if you did something is like remembering that you did not do it. So why? Because they have the same judgment. So what would be the judgment if you remembered that you didn't do something? Wouldn't you go to what you remembered that you missed it immediately, unless you got to the next, to the same integral in the next rakat? Yes. If you remembered, that's what you would do. Then if you doubted, if you did that, then you have to do as if you remembered that you didn't. So immediately you'll do that. That means if you doubted in this scenario, you're going to do just like if you remembered here. Any question there? Uh, Notice here we're talking about maintaining the sequence of the integrals. So in the chapter of Sujudu Sahu, there is clarification of keeping the sequence of the integrals. Keeping the sequence of the integrals, which is what? That is the 17th integral. We're actually right now talking about the 17th integral before we got to the 16th one. 16th integral is the first salam. We didn't get there yet because sujood sahu comes before the salam. In the process of talking about sujood sahu, we had to talk about keeping the sequence. So when one remembers before getting to the same integral in the next rakat, he immediately returns to it and continues from there. And doubting if he did it is like remembering that he did not. Then, if he procrastinates, his prayer is invalidated. If he procrastinates, his prayer is invalidated. Yani, if he's doubting if he's in the right position, because he should be in another position. That's what he's doubting. Should I be in a position other than this one? So if he remembered that he should be in a position other than that one, he goes to the one that he knows that he should be in. If he's doubting if he should be in a position other than that one, then he goes also to that one. Because it's as if he remembered that he didn't do it. If he remembered and he procrastinated, if he remembered that he should be in another position and he stayed in the wrong position, his prayer is invalidated. So also, if he doubts if he's in the right position, he goes immediately to the right position, or else his prayer is invalidated. Is it a certain time frame for procrastination to make the prayer invalid? Here, immediately he moves. Immediately. Here's the word. Immediately. So that means you're in sujood, and then you doubt it if you need to make ruku'. So, okay, now this doubt is confirmed for you. So what do you do? Now that this doubt is confirmed for you, what do you do? If you stay right there anyway, you invalidated your prayer. Soon as that doubt is confirmed for you, you stand right up. You say, if he missed an integral in the second and reached to it in the fourth, would he then consider himself that he is in the third? Yes. Or is everything in between? No, he's in the third. Except doubting about the Fatiha while still standing. Except doubting about the Fatiha while still standing. So you're standing. You didn't make ruku', and you're doubting if you recited Al-Fatiha. How could that be? Because maybe, for example, you did tashahhud absent-mindedly, and you said the whole thing, and you said, "Wa ashhadu anna Muhammadar Rasulullah," and then before you bent over, you said, "Oh, wait a second here. Did I just recite the Fatiha?" So now you're doubting if you did the Fatiha. So it's obligatory on you to do it. Like, even if you really did do the Fatiha, and right before you bowed, you doubted. You said, was that tashahhud or Fatiha? So you have to recite Al-Fatiha now, but your prayer is not invalidated if you pause here because you're not in the wrong position. I think that's clear. Any question there? That's important here. SubhanAllah, I benefited from this chapter a lot for understanding some fiqh. Maybe I told you that before. This important case here. Think about that. This is a very important case here because I understood something. That's how I'm saying this important case here. Because you might doubt something, but it doesn't mean right there you're in the wrong position. So I'm not going to go further there. But just so you don't get confused. You might have a doubt about something that doesn't mean that you're actually in the wrong position, though. This is the point of this rule here. Except doubting about the Fatiha while standing because you're not in the wrong position. The word because here is important, more important than the example. It's just that here where it says, except doubting about the Fatiha while still standing, looks like there's no other exception. And I don't have anything else in my books here that goes here. Not another scenario than this one. But the reason is important because you're not in the wrong position. So take that. Thus, if while bowing one doubted if he recited, or while prostrating he doubted if he bowed, he immediately stands. If while bowing he doubted if he recited, or while prostrating he doubted if he bowed, so these two examples here are on purpose. Yani, those are two specific cases. Two specific cases. If you want to understand the fiqh, there's some cases that are specific, you need to recognize them. And there's cases that are broad, you need to recognize them. Sometimes you might think something specific is broad or something broad is specific, and then you won't understand the case truly. This right here is two specific cases. If while bowing one doubted if he recited, that's the scenario. He was bowing and he doubted if he recited. So what does he have to do? He has to stand immediately. That's one case. Or if one was prostrating, he doubted if he bowed. That's another case, specific case. While prostrating, he doubted if he bowed. What does he have to do? Also, he has to stand immediately. Might think those broad cases there because they had the same result. He immediately stands. It's not the same standing though, right? There's one case going to be the standing for the recitation, and the other one's going to be the standing uh, for bowing. Yani, same position. Subhanallah, it is the same position. The standing for reciting, it is the standing from which you bow. That's true. It's the same position. Two cases here. If while bowing one doubted if he recited, then he stands immediately for the recitation. Or while prostrating he doubted if he bowed, then he stands immediately for the bow. Also, if one remembered while standing for the second rakat, also here, this is a specific case. You know how sometimes you would say about something, that's oddly specific? So this was, could you call oddly specific here, meaning very specific case here. If one remembered while standing for the second rakat that he did not do the second prostration for the first rakat, that's specific, that's the scenario. He remembered while standing for the second rakat that he did not do the second prostration for the first rakat. So amongst the people are those who are conceiving the scenario easily. And amongst the people are those who have to think about that. What does that mean? Second rakat, second sujood, first prostration, second prostration. Let me put this together here. The more you can do that, then the greater your fiqh is. Fiqh is so powerful. Hefty. If one remembered while standing for the second rakat that he did not do the second prostration for the first rakat. So you have one rak'ah, first rak'ah, you bow, you stand up, you prostrate, you sit up. Now there's supposed to be a second prostration. You found yourself standing. So you're in the second rak'ah. And in the second rak'ah standing, you doubted if you made that second sujood from the first rak'ah. Not doubted, remembered, not doubted, remembered. This scenario is remembered here. If one remembered while standing for the second rakat that he remembered that he did not do the second prostration for the first rakat, nor did he sit. He remembered that he did not do sujood and he did not sit. Then he must not prostrate from his standing position. What should he do? He sits immediately. So he must not prostrate from his standing position. Is there any prostration from a standing position? There is. After you come up from ruku', right? When you come up from ruku', you'll be standing. From that standing position, you make sujood. Is there any other way? Yeah. Also, when you come up from the first sujood, you'll be sitting. So from that sitting position, you make sujood. So, and one time you make sujood from a standing position, and another time you make sujood from a sitting position. The scenario here is one remembered while standing for the second rakat that he did not do the sujood, the second sujood in the first rakat, and he did not sit before that also, which means he did do the first sujood. He did do the first sujood, so that's why he's not going to make a sujood from his standing position. He did do the first sujood, so he should not do a sujood from his standing position. He must not prostrate from his standing position. Rather, he sits with serenity so that he can fulfill the sitting and the serenity. And then he prostrates. Then that fulfills the second sujood right there. And then he prostrates for forgetfulness before the salam. MashaAllah. Four. He prostrates for forgetfulness before the salam. Any question there? Okay. All of this that we said, the person didn't say the salam. So didn't we say? One would either leave out an integral or a component. We didn't talk about leaving out a component yet. We talked about the integral here. It's insufficient to replace an integral. He would either leave out an integral. We just talked about leaving out an integral. Or he'd leave out a component. We didn't get there yet. Or he'd leave out a form. We didn't get there yet. And he would either doubt that he missed something or remember. We talked about doubting and remembering. And that would either be before the salam or afterwards. Now we just talked about before the salam. How about afterwards? Question. So is it that when one forgets, he goes immediately to the integral beforehand? When one forgets, he goes immediately to what? To the integral that he's doubting if he you say he forgets here. You mean he remembers that he missed it or he doubts that he missed it? Either way. If he remembers that he missed it, he goes immediately to what he remembers that he missed. If he doubts if he missed it, he goes immediately to what he doubts that he did it. That's the rule, not the integral beforehand. Not the integral beforehand. He goes immediately to the integral that he remembered that he didn't do, or to the integral that he doubts if he did it. That's the rule, not the integral beforehand. I mean, Wafiq. You said if he did sit with serenity, then stood up, he still sits, right? You mean he sits with serenity? Why you say he stood up? Yani stood up means he's standing on his feet. He sits with serenity. What's he going to do from that sitting position? He has to make sujood from that position. But instead, he stood up. Now you're adding a case. So we have to now just understand what's here. Is what has been presented been Yani? Is it clear for you? I'm not going to now take this question. It's just stick to what's here, inshallah ta'ala, for now. Now, if one says the salam, so now it looks like he's out of the prayer. He said the salam. And then he stands. And he turns from the qibla. And he speaks a little, even. And even if he left the masjid. But then he remembers. Not doubts. Now doubting is not like remembering. After the salam. Doubting is not like remembering after the salam. So what do we say? One would either leave out an integral or a component or a form. And one would either doubt he missed something or remember. He would doubt or remember. Doubt, yani, doubting is like remembering, but there's a difference between being before the salam or after the salam. After the salam, doubting and remembering are not the same. That's fiqh. Subhanallah, very interesting. You might say, doubting is like remembering here, and doubting is not like remembering here. Whoa, what am I supposed to do here? How do I know? There is actually a consistent rule here. There's a consistent rule here that as a result of that consistent rule, these two became different. There's another rule at play that made doubting different in each case. That consistent rule is istishab al-asl, sticking to the origin. I'll come back to that inshallah. So, if one says the salam, so it looks like he's out of the prayer. And then he stands because he thinks he's out of the prayer. And he turns from the qibla and he even speaks a little. And even if he left the masjid, and then he remembers, not doubts. Normally soon, not after a long time. He remembered, not after a long time, he remembered soon after. Even though he stood up, and even though he turned from the qibla, and even if he spoke a little, and even if he left the masjid. But the time was not long, and he did not step in any filth. And he remembered that he left out ruku', for example. or he remembers that he missed a rak'ah or two. Then he faces the qibla and he goes back to the integral he left and he continues from there. Because, same rule, everything after what was abandoned is voided. Still same rule there. Everything after what he left out, and he missed something, and then he came with something like the salam. So everything that he did in between there is voided. But by the time being short, he's still in the sanctity of the prayer. This is because the Prophet ﷺ said the salam after only 2 rak'ats of a fourfold prayer. It was Dhuhr or Asr. He prayed 2 rak'ats and then said the salam. So Dhul Yadain said, and it was reported that when he did that, the people who rush, as soon as the prayer is done, they get up and go immediately. They got up and rushed out immediately. They said, was the prayer shortened? On their way out. Was the prayer shortened?
All right.
Yes.
When you finish a sentence above, those the two, the last page, you finish it. Because you see where you stopped here, not doubts.
Yes.
There you stopped, therefore finish
Yeah,
it.
I skipped something there.
Yeah, intentionally skipped it.
Yes.
Okay. Barakallah fikum.
Amin wa fikum.
Amen.
This is because the Prophet ﷺ said the salam after only 2 rak'ats of a fourfold prayer. So Dhul Yadain said, was the prayer shortened or did you forget, O Messenger of Allah? He said, I did not forget and it was not shortened. Which means what? Means he forgot, alayhi salatu wassalam. Then he asked his companions, Abu Bakr and Umar, and they verified for him, which reminded him. That's important. And then he returned to complete what remained of his prayer. Because we're not going to say that he added that with zero recollection. That's very important. And therefore, that is your case. And you do not take the word of another in these issues. We say in explanation of this hadith that they reminded him. As some people think that you have to take their word for it, meaning, let's say you did make a mistake in the prayer and you're leading the prayer. And then some brothers, they say, Subhanallah. And some sisters, they are hitting the back of their hands to remind you. The rule is, if they are not reminding you, you hear them, very fine. But if you do not recall for yourself that you missed something, then you continue with your own sequence. So then after that, someone is going to say, especially if he doesn't have fiqh, he's going to say, why didn't you do such and such? Didn't you hear us saying Subhanallah? Or maybe he does know fiqh and he's just curious. Did you hear us saying Subhanallah? So that one, let's say he's faqih, or at least he's learned it. And he says, yes, I heard you. You were so loud and clear. May Allah have mercy on you. But I didn't remember, although you were attempting to remind me. So I continued with my own sequence as per the rule. Then, if you know the Imam has done what invalidates the prayer, you break away from him. If you know for sure he did what invalidates the prayer and he's not taking a reminder, you break away from him. For him, his prayer is not invalid because he doesn't remember. For you, he did something that invalidates the prayer, so you don't stay with him. He says, so if he's out of the sanction of the prayer and he remembers, then the prayer becomes invalid. Yeah, if he's out of the sanctity of the prayer, means that, he's out of the prayer, actually. He's out of the prayer, so it means he has to start over from the beginning. If we say he's still in the sanctity of the prayer, means he just continues. He didn't actually get out of his prayer. Yani, he did not invalidate his prayer. He did not invalidate his prayer. Although he got up and he moved and he talked, he turned from the Qibla. So the Prophet ﷺ, he asked his companions and then he returned to complete what remained of his prayer. So he just prayed two more rakats only. He didn't start over. If the time were long, yani he remembered for sure, he must restart. Yani his prayer is invalidated because the format of the prayer was altered by that long pause. It is recommended that he prostrates for forgetfulness. Wallahu a'lam, we'll stop there. So last time we managed to squeeze all of this in one lesson. Still like all this here. So it went very fast, I think. This might not actually take a long time. We're still going to stop here. This part maybe takes 10 minutes, 15 minutes. If you have any question, I can answer for you.
Sheikh,
Yes.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
In the scenario you just gave, where the person is leading and people behind him would say Subhanallah, or they'd to get his attention, and thinking that he did something that he wasn't supposed to, but he acknowledged it. When he's done, did you say that he would just acknowledge the fact that, yes, I heard you, but I don't have to do whatever you thought I had to do? Is that
That's
what it
right.
was?
Yes.
Okay.
Now he doesn't have to. He's not even supposed to.
Yeah.
If they don't
Okay.
remind him actually, so he hears them and he does not actually know what it was. So that's
Right.
what it means basically. Yeah, I hear you. I don't even remember that I missed anything. So then you don't alter something. You stay on your own sequence.
So in this case, he finishes, and if they come to him after and said, "Oh, you missed such and such, or you didn't do this," then
Then
his
only if they make him remember does he have to repeat or continue.
okay. But if he knows for sure, no, I was actually right. You guys might have been mistaken. Then he continues as was, right?
Instead of saying knows, let's say believes.
Right. Right.
If he
Okay.
believes that he completed his prayer, he has no recollection of this deficiency that they claim,
Right.
then he doesn't have to repeat anything,
Barakallahu fik.
despite their reminder. Amin wa fiq. Even if it were a lot of people too. As long as it wasn't mutawatir. That's clear? As long as it wasn't mutawatir.
Does that mean by consensus then, when you
Yeah,
say that?
mutawatir means successive mass report.
Right. So if they were talking about a congregation of like 1,000 people, and all of them came together, you're saying to tell him that would could be
So
considered.
just take it this way. If mutawatir if the meaning of mutawatir is clear for you, then just take that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
If it were mutawatir report, then he takes it because mutawatir cannot be wrong.
Fair. Barakallahu fik.
Amin wa fiq. Barakallahu fikum. Subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdik. أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك